Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Stream live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis, and I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation. And my co-host, Tommy Lewis, as you can see, is not here today. He is on assignment with Leadership Cincinnati, doing some work with them, two-day kind of retreat around inclusion and DEI. So we're wishing him all the best this morning. I know they're going to have a great facilitator in Tommy. We miss him today, but he'll be back with us next week. And I'm glad to be with you today as we have ourselves a conversation. How about that? Me and you. And if you're here in the community and you want to weigh in, I certainly want to welcome you into this conversation. You know, you can chat to us. I plan on talking about some diversity conversation tools today. But I'd like to start by just talking a little bit about my week. I had a wonderful week. Every week, one of the things that I love to do that I don't talk a lot about is I love writing music and working on music every single week. I go to my sort of workshop downstairs. I've got a recording studio. I'm here at my office. I have a recording studio, and I love to sing and write music, and it really gives life back to me. So in all the stresses that many of us are going through out the week with, I think you got to find some things that you love to do. This last week, I also got a chance to get out and golf with Tommy. Tommy and I got out on Wednesday. It was 70 degrees, and we were out there having a ball. And I was telling my wife that one of the things that I love about when Tommy and I get together on the golf course is we literally will have belly laughs. I mean, we'd be out there just talking about stuff and just fall off the golf cart laughing about situations. You know, I was telling him that I had golfed, with another guy out there, and I was just playing horrible. And I said that, when you're playing horrible and you're playing with somebody for the first time, you want to say this is not really me. But the reality is, it is you. That is who you are today, And so that's the thing I love most about golf is that it is so humbling. And for people like myself and maybe many of you who have been successful at things, maybe some of you have been good athletes. When I played basketball, whenever you showed up at the basketball court, you were generally the same ball player. But in golf, you can look like, a Tiger Woods one day, not quite. And you can look like you've never swung a golf club in your life the next day. And so, but it keeps you in check. And so I was just laughing about how when you, are playing bad, there's no use in you trying to say this is not me because that's really who you are. So we had an enjoyable time talking about that. This week, I also had a chance to do some focus groups with a couple of clients. And I had one focus group that was probably one of the most profound and thoughtful focus groups that I've had across my career. There were just people in there that were insightful, that gave a lot of wisdom and insight, as to, why they would answer things one way in a digital survey and then another way when they see you in real life. And so I was really just delighted to be able to talk to people, listen to people, and have some great conversation. But then right after that, I had an individual that was in attack mode, and he was just forget about the focus group. He just wanted to give me a performance evaluation. And, but again, just like golf, when things like that happen, it calls upon your ability to utilize your skills, to respect people, to utilize empathic listening, that even when they're saying something to you that feels like, oh my goodness, and there were other participants that sort of said that back to the organization. If not you, who? We are not in the midst of a divided country, and somehow that's not going to manifest itself in the work that we do. Because most often I'm able to demonstrate so much empathy to people that it's rare for me anymore to get a participant, especially in a focus group, that would be aggressive and hostile and almost bullying. But periodically you'll run across that. And, my perspective is that we have to find ways to love all people. That can't just be something that's a principle or a philosophy. Sometimes you're going to be called upon to demonstrate that. And I think that when you do that, it still is helpful to others, but it's not always easy to go through that. So I'd like to talk about, I brought some slides with me today. Since I didn't have time, I brought some slides, some things that I prepared just for you. But if you want to weigh in at any point, again, if you are able to chat with us, we welcome that. We welcome your participation with that. And so here are the slides that I have to share with you, diversity conversation tools. I wanted to start here by saying that oftentimes there are myths that we have about disagreement. And I saw this piece of data that talked about what we get wrong about disagreement. One, people who disagree with us do so because they are uninformed or unintelligent. No, everybody that disagrees with you is not because they're uninformed or unintelligent. But if you think about that, and for some of you, that might seem like common sense, unless you start thinking about it in political terms. If you start thinking about it sometimes in cultural terms, where we have stronger beliefs, when people disagree with us, oftentimes we'll say they're uneducated, uninformed, and unintelligent. The second myth is that disagreement will ultimately make people more defensive. That doesn't have to be the case. And that the third myth is that disagreement is bad. And I would say that there is some real value to disagreement. I was looking at a chart that said that what we want to get in our workplaces in many ways is a high level of intellectual friction. In other words, as we get friction intellectually, it helps us to think outside the box. And we want to decrease the social friction that we experience when we're talking about things in the workplace and in our homes. So high level of intellectual friction, low level of social friction. Let's continue. One of the things that I talk about, and I've talked about for years, as many of you know, I wrote a book, Diversity Conversations. In there, chapter 6, I talk about becoming a diversity critical thinker. I believe that that's one of the things that's so important in the world that we live in today, is that you are engaged in being a diversity critical thinker. Now, what I find is that because we live in a time where there's so many silos, people spend too much time and energy just looking at things that reinforce what we believe. Now, I like to do that too, always prepared for an argument, the things that you enjoy, you're reading about them all the time. But I believe that you also, in order to be an effective citizen in many ways, and be a sort of an equitable contributor to humanity, then I believe that you got to spend some time thinking about the other side, trying to engage in becoming a diversity critical thinker. We define it as the ability to look at an issue that challenges your beliefs from multiple points of view. I say that diversity critical thinkers are people who are able to challenge their own paradigms, their own ways of thinking. People who are able to accept the validity of perspectives that are different than the one that you have. And so let's just have you hold those peas in your mouth for a minute. The validity, a willingness to accept the validity of perspectives that are different than the one you have. I want you to think about that. What are some perspectives that are different than the one that you have that are valid? And so that's one of the things that we want to try to do. And so, I understand. So I'm not a big Second Amendment fan, but I understand people's desires to have freedom to have arms. I do recognize that in this country's history, people were concerned about the government somehow overtaking you and foisting its will upon you against your own will. And so I understand that some people want to be armed for those reasons. I also understand that some people love the sport of shooting and hunting and things like that. And even though that's not of big importance to me, I understand people's desire to have weapons. I also even understand the argument of the only way you stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy with a gun. Now, I believe that we are a nation that has too many guns. I think that we really don't need people owning AK 47s and high capacity magazines and things like that. I don't think we need any of that personally. But I've got to be willing to take a look at, is there any validity around perspectives that are different than the one that I have? And I do believe that that I've been grateful in situations where somebody thought they were just going to go into a place and start killing up everybody. I was glad when there was somebody in there with a gun. And yet I don't want a whole nation of cowboys. People were walking around. Everybody's armed. I mean, everybody's armed. You know, I mean, in some communities, I think even in Cincinnati and places, man, you just see people, man, strapping them on, man, guns, just like we're back in the Wild Wild West, you know. And that's why we have more homicides, more killings in this country than any place else in the world, you know. And there are countries like Japan and others that it's very rare for somebody to ever be shot. Because the consequences are so high. So to be a diversity critical thinker, you've got to be able to recognize the validity of perspectives that are different than the one that you have. Diversity critical thinkers also know their own beliefs, their own principles, and they recognize their own hot buttons. And I think that that's something that you want to do, is to know what you believe and why you believe it. Know what some of your principles are. Know what some of those hot buttons are that exist for you. Diversity critical thinkers are people who embrace the uneasiness that comes with having difficult conversations about diversity. And then finally, I say that diversity critical thinkers are people who seek the truth that exists beyond our own common understanding. And what that means is that, and I'll talk again about golf. The thing I love about golf is that anybody that's ever been good at anything needs to play golf, because golf hates comfort and it hates overconfidence. So if you come to golf with a lot of confidence and you think that you've gotten good enough now that you can become comfortable, it's not going to go well for you. Golf is one of the most difficult games that I've ever played. And so that's why I love playing it, is because it's humbling. I say to people, though, that ultimately the golf ball has to concede itself to knowledge and the ability to perform and implement the knowledge that you have. In other words, if golf is just not going to be a random game where the ball's just going anywhere all the time, the more you know, the more you learn, the more success you will ultimately have in golf. And so I think that the same thing holds true for us in terms of our ability to think, that the more knowledge we gain, the more perspectives that we embrace, the better thinkers we are. So I believe that we ought to be perpetually engaged in seeking the truth that exists beyond our own common understanding. I've learned some things over the last week that I want to share with you, because I see myself as a lifelong learner. And so every day that I get up, there's a bit of excitement that I can have about the fact that I can learn some things today that I didn't know yesterday. And it just helps me to be a better citizen, to be a better husband, to be a better father. And so there's some things that I'm going to share with you today. I promise you, and some of the tools that I'm going to share are going to be helpful for you in your ordinary relationships. The first one I'm going to start with is empathic listening. We've talked about this before. Many of you might be aware of empathic listening or active listening, but this is the number one tool that I've learned across my marriage that has really been beneficial and really made me a better husband and a better father, a better leader in business. is the ability to become to engage in empathic listening. Empathic listening, we identified as having 5 steps. Step number 1, sort of when you're engaged in active listening, especially when you're in a situation where you're in disagreement, you see something differently than someone else. The first thing that happens, my experience is that your mind wants to protect you and your perspective. And so debate, argument is oftentimes where we might start. And I would suggest that one of the best tools to utilize when you are faced with someone who has a perspective that is different than the one that you have is to begin by empathic listening. Active listening posture really is, appropriate eye contact, leaning forward, not crossing your arms, but opening up your posture so that you look like you really are open, getting that scowl off your face. I don't know about you, but as soon as somebody starts saying something that I disagree with, my serious Eric face comes into play. And we have to sort of look at our body language and make sure that we are utilizing body language that is inviting people into a respectful conversation. The second step is a tentative opening. So what you're really looking to do is to try to paraphrase back what someone has said. So let me slow this conversation down. When somebody comes to you with something that has lit your fuse, they said something, that feels crazy, it feels wrong, it feels challenging, and you want to respond. The first thing I think that has to happen, and that happens for me in my good conversations, is a bell goes off in my head. Ding, 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 ding. Eric, this is an opportunity for empathic listening. Because if that bell doesn't go off, then the Rottweiler comes out. Now I'm debating and arguing and all like that. I'm in it. The older I get, though, I don't even have the energy much for that, So when I was a younger man, I would take up any argument that would come my way. The older I get, I'm looking for calm, peace, so I'm grateful for the aging process. But so what that means is that when that bell goes off, it says, let's go to empathic listening. This is an opportunity for you to distinguish yourself, for you to take something that looks like it might be a negative on the surface and make that a positive. And so then I'm looking at trying to paraphrase what they're saying. So I might then say, let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. Tentative opening. A tentative opening means that I'm not certain that I'm clear. Let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. So I use that language. And then I go to step 3, which I express both the message content, the ABCs of what they've said, and then the feeling content, the emotions that they may have with that. And so I want to express the message content, the ABCs of what they said, the feeling content, sort of my sense of how they're feeling. Now, if I get the feeling wrong, oftentimes they'll adjust. They'll tell me, no, that's not how I feel. I'm not angry. I'm frustrated. And then step number 4, you check for accuracy. So that's where you get a chance to say, is that what you're saying? And so then they say either yes or they say no. Or oftentimes they'll say, well, no, well, also I'm saying da, da, da. And so if they add some additional things to their message, then you again go back to paraphrasing that the ABCs of that additional elements of the message, and then the feeling content that goes with that. And then once they say, yes, that's what I'm saying, then you can say, how can I, help? What is it that you want from me? So before you start talking about your point of view, you might even just weigh in and ask them, how can I help? What do you need? How would you like me to help in this situation? Now let's continue to look at some scenarios. I've got some scenarios here that we can practice. And certainly if you have any that you want to put into the chat, I'm open to those as well. But one of the common, I'll tell you, what's interesting about empathic listening is that sometimes it can be easier to do with a stranger or in the workplace than it is at home. Yeah. If you really want to get some real, money for your efforts, just do these skills at home, because that's where the rubber really meets the road, and that's where it can be more difficult for us, is when we are trying to implement these tools and these skills when the stakes are higher, when someone is somebody that we love, someone we're more comfortable with, then oftentimes it can be more difficult to apply these skills. Let's just look at sort of, like I said, significant others and some of the disagreements that we have with significant others. I don't know about you, but you remember that bell that I was talking about? The bell that goes off that says, ding, 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 ding. Eric, this is an opportunity. That bell is often slow to go off when I'm having these discussions with my wife or with my children or with my brother, my brothers. And so it means that it makes it that much more important that you really take time to engage in empathic listening. What I find is it's almost like you're in a plane that's doing a nosedive. Family member has said something to you, it's lit the fuse, set you off, and man, you are going for a nosedive because everything in you just wants to defend yourself. That's your ego that's trying to defend you. That's your pride sometimes. This situation says that, the scenario says a significant other expresses hurt that you had so much more energy when your friend called. Now, I don't know about you, but every once in a while, after I get through a long week of work, I come to Friday and I come home. I'm glad to see Judy. She may want to talk about her day. And literally, I'm trying to use my empathic listening and I'm leaning in, but my eyes are they're just going down. I mean, beyond my control, my eyes are going down. And I'm not being a very good listener. But then all of a sudden, maybe my good friend Terry Cooley had called me from California. Oh, man, I wake up, man. I got all kind of energy. Me and Terry are having a ball. I might even leave the bedroom, go to the bathroom, shut the door, and we just in there laughing and hollering. My wife is in the bedroom thinking, he was fast asleep when I'm talking. Now he's wide awake when his friend's calling. And so, after I come out, the bathroom after about, 20 minutes, 25 minutes talking to Terry, she might say, I can't believe how much energy you had when your friend called. And I'm hurt that you just don't seem to care about what I have to talk about. Now, the natural tendency is to say, yes, I do. I can't believe you say that. I mean, we have so many wonderful conversations. I'm in your corner the whole way. That's not the response that you want to take. You want to use empathic listening. Judy, let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. It sounds like what you're saying is that you're hurt, that it seems like when you're talking to me that I don't have as much energy, but then when a friend of mine calls that I gain a lot of energy and a lot of excitement, and that just is something that hurts you. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Well, first of all, let me apologize. And, that's something I want to try to work on to make sure that doesn't happen again in the future. So there, I may not ask, how can I support? Because it's obvious on the surface that I was wrong. I would say that there are a number of other situations where someone has said something to you, a significant other, has said something to you that you don't believe is true. And so I think that's difficult. I was looking at apologies and, what meaningful apology looks like. And I just wanted to share a couple of things with you here, because I think that, I don't know about you, but I'm not always the best with apologies. But the good news is I've gotten 30 some years of experience with it, because I never realized when I got married, when I started my business, when I became a father, I never realized that leadership and leaders were going to have to do a lot more apologizing than anybody else. And so if you want to be a good husband, if you want to be a good significant other, then a lot of times that's not you sort of jumping on your partner. That's you apologizing when you make mistakes. And I'm going to say that from a male standpoint, men, Christian men, especially, oftentimes Christian men have read in the Bible that the husband is the head of the household, and they really think sometimes that means going around being like a bad boss. I would say that leadership is all about servanthood and being a servant to others. And so what that means to me is that I have to be the one that is willing to apologize first in my marriage, as a leader of my company. It's not about the people that work with me for me. It's not about them apologizing to me all the time. It's really about me leading the way and really modeling that behavior. And so as I look at apologies, a genuine apology should include maybe three of these elements. Acknowledgement of responsibility. And so when you make a mistake, when you've harmed somebody, then you want to start by acknowledging and taking responsibility. And I think that it's important to take ownership of the situation and to admit that you were wrong. The second thing is express remorse, is to genuinely express remorse for your actions. You should convey genuine empathy for any harm or hurt that you may have caused. Express regret for that. That's another element of a genuine apology. And then trying to make amends. If it's something that you did that you can undo, then you want to try to do that. Talk about fixing the problem, finding ways to prevent it from occurring in the future. Those are three elements of a genuine apology. Now, I don't know about you, but by show of hands, how many of you, when accused, especially by a family member, sometimes don't feel that you were wrong? I don't know why it is. It seems like it should be easy that somebody says something to you, that they want an apology, and you should be able to recognize that it was wrong and apologize. But unfortunately, that's not how simple life is. And so sometimes somebody has said you hurt them, you did something, and you don't believe you did it. There's either a blind spot or you're right. What do you do then? Now, I Googled that. I don't know how many of you have taken advantage of all these AI websites, open AI, artificial intelligence, but I've been doing that too. And I put in open AI. I put it in there. What do you do when somebody has accused you of something and you're not wrong? How do you apologize then? OpenAI gave me some garbage, man. It just gave me garbage recommendations. They were all fake apologies. And nobody, even if they're wrong, they don't want a fake apology. But how many of you know that feels like that's all I can give you is a fake apology? Because I don't really feel like I was wrong. So I'm going to give you some other things to think about. Number one, start with empathic listening. Yep. Let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. It sounds like you're saying that you feel as though that I'm the one that sort of starts arguments every day, that I don't listen to you very well, that I am spending money on anything that I want to, but always scrutinizing the things that you spend. And it seems like you're hurt about that, and you're concerned about our finances as a couple. Is that what you're saying? So I would say start with empathic listening, because empathic listening doesn't have to mean that you're in agreement, but it can show people that you are hearing what they are saying. And then in those situations where you don't feel like you can provide a genuine apology, what would you like me to do? And then they say, well, first of all, I'd like an apology from you. Now you got a decision to make. And here's my suggestion: that the leader in you, sometimes, this is not an answer for all situations. Sometimes I just eat it. I practice the humility that comes with apologizing, even when you don't think you're wrong. And so when I make that choice, It's not, well, I'm sorry. If you felt hurt by something I said, I'm just sorry. You know, no, that's not an apology. Uh, Give a full-throated, genuine apology. Because my parents, parents said a lot of dumb things, and there were some things that they did that were wrong. But some of that old wisdom may even be helpful today. I remember my dad would say, my mom said it most. We don't believe in spanking or corporal punishment anymore. So I want to give that as a caveat. But she would say, well, if I spanked you, if it was wrong this time, you probably got away with something before, so just count this up to that. And so I would say to you that if you're apologizing in this situation for something that you didn't do, there's probably other things that you did do that you didn't apologize for. So I think that it's a good way to continue to build our character if we just simply apologize, even when we think that we are wrong, are right. And so I want to offer that to you. Let's look at the second scenario. A coworker has shared with you that you keep asking them to do critical projects at the last second. So how do we demonstrate empathic listening around that? Well, coworker, let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. It sounds like what you're saying to me is that you're a bit frustrated that it seems to happen on a regular basis that I'm coming to you at the last minute and asking you to weigh in and to, do critical projects for me at the last minute. Is that what you're saying? And then when they say, yes, that's what I'm saying. First of all, let me apologize. So if somebody comes to me with something like that, then I'm not generally asking them, how can I support? Because it's clear on the surface that what I need to do is stop that behavior, and so I can commit to that. But if I'm not sure what someone has said, what someone wants from me, then I have to ask, how can I help? The third scenario is a coworker has called you biased or has said something like this. Eric, I just want to bring something to your attention. I've been working on this team for the last 5 years. I'm the first female manager that they've ever had. I do feel like there's just a lot of sexism on this team. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're saying things all the time, laughing behind my back, not really challenging me at every turn. And oftentimes I feel that the reason why they're challenging me is because I'm a female. And I just wanted to share that with you. So when someone comes to me with something like that, I would say, thank you for bringing this situation to me. Let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. It sounds like you're saying that you're leading a team, manager of a team of mostly men, and you're the first female manager that has led that team. It sounds like you're saying that you are a bit concerned, maybe frustrated, that it seems like you're receiving a lot of sexism in terms of the behaviors that people are displaying to you. And that's making it harder for you to provide the right kind of leadership. Is that what you're saying? And then if they say yes, but also I'm saying, I don't really feel that my vice president really supports me when I bring these kind of issues to them, and I'm just lost for where to go from here. So, then I would say, well, it sounds like you're also saying that you're just kind of frustrated around what do you do, because you've got a vice president that you've shared this with that doesn't seem to either be concerned or not providing any real support for you in the midst of that. Is that what you're saying? And then I might say, well, how can I help? And is there any support that I can provide? They say, well, actually, I don't need you to do anything. I just wanted to let you know, and I appreciate you just listening. So sometimes there's not an action that people are looking for. They just need somebody who's willing to listen. And I think that that's something that we ought to be prepared to engage in. Now, I would say that this very basic tool, empathic listening, is one of the most powerful tools in my arsenal. And I would say that, it's kind of like a coach that yells at his team, you guys aren't rebounding. We've been teaching rebounding for weeks. And I would say to coaches that, well, no, you haven't really taught it until you see it being displayed. it isn't understood until you see it happening. So that means you have to try to find ways of teaching it so that you will see it implemented, manifested. I would say the same thing is true here. It's not important that you've heard of this before. It's not important that you tried it once or twice in your life. It's when empathic listening is truly understood, then it becomes almost automatic, almost a reflex, that whenever you feel conflict, disagreement, or simply a need to understand what someone's saying with great clarity, then empathic listening is the tool that you want to apply. I hope if there's anybody that uses this tool that wants to weigh in here around the value that this tool has had for you in your relationships, with your significant other, with your children, at your church, at your job, in your school environment, with your friends, certainly weigh in and let us know that. Let's go on. See what other tools we have. So just recently, I was thinking about empathic communication, and I began to say, well, there's two elements of this. There's the empathic listening piece, but maybe there's the empathic speaking piece as well. In other words, you can also, as a speaker, try to engage in empathic speaking. What does that look like then? Well, empathic speaking posture, open, leaning in, appropriate eye contact, smiling sometimes. And so when I want to speak and share something with someone, then I might say, instead of that tentative opening that you do on the listener side, on the speaker side, you might say, what I'm sharing is my view or my perception of what's happening. So you're starting from a standpoint of, here's something I want to share with you about you, but it's my view or my perception. And so I'm making room for the fact that what I'm saying may or may not be actually what is occurring. And then I want to express my message and maybe my feeling about that. And then I want to sort of say, maybe state my communication goal. Here's what I'd love to see come out of this dialogue. And then you can ask them at the end to reflect back what you said. So then you're leading them into the empathic listening side, because I think that we need so much practice at engaging in healthy communication. Now, I'm just going to cross my arms a little bit here, because I already see some of you out there. I can't see you physically, but I see you. You're not buying it. This feels like a sledgehammer for an ant. But I would say to you that that's our problem, is that we are not using tools. We believe we got this. We're going to do it all on our own. We're just going to go to our go-to communication things, or we're just going to keep on arguing. And I'm telling you, there's a better way. Let's see what Alonzo has said here. Eric, do you find when you ask, how can I help? And the person says, can you do X, Y, Z? Do you feel like you are picking up their problem? Ooh, that's a tough question. Situational. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I'm listening to people, and I'm trying to see, what they've asked, if that's something that I can do, or if I don't. If I can't do it, there's a term called boundaries. And I would say that that's one of the things that I learned in a communication class in a church group. There was a class, Apples of Gold, I think, or something like that, where they were talking about monkeys, that, picking up people's monkeys, so you don't want to find yourself allowing people to transfer their simple baggage to you, so that's not something that you want to do. But if people are asking me for real feedback around things that I need to change in my own behavior that would be helpful to our relationship, then absolutely I want to consider that. Thank you for the question, Lonzo. It's going depend on the situation in each person. Good to hear from you, my friend. Let's see. Larissa, how are you? Can you give me the resource to read more about this presentation? My current job needs these tools. I'll send you my PowerPoint. These are things that we're teaching in organizations, and I love you. I love your family, and certainly send me your email address, and I'll email this back to you. Let's see what Alonzo has said. I've known Larissa since she was born, and her family loved them greatly. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Alonzo. I appreciate that, man. And this is something that we have to keep working on. And I was so grateful. I was missing Tommy, knowing that he wasn't going to be here today. But I really think that it's so important for all of us to continue to build our arsenal of tools that we can use. Because I'll tell you that even in a situation, Larissa, where our organization is not buying into this, I think that we change the world when we start operating in different ways. I've got this client, Louisville Water. I can't brag about them enough. But, I've come up with a joke here recently that because I've seen it in church where pastors, if they're not careful, want to mimic what's happening in corporations. How many of you have seen that? The pastor sees sort of some of the bad models of leadership in corporations, and they want to bring that into the church. Oh, that's not bad. That's not good. I would say that if we're not careful, that many of us, we hate bad bosses, but we almost aspire to be one. And so we've got to be careful that we're not doing the things that bad bosses do. And so what that means is that, so as a leader, as a consultant in organizations, it's been a number of times recently where I've done some things or said some things that someone maybe was hurt inadvertently, where I've had to apologize. And if I did something publicly, I'll apologize publicly. I'll give you an example. Well, I was with a company, and a participant was saying something, and that something was opposite of what I was saying. And so sometimes when you see that happen, if you're not careful, there's a knee-jerk reaction that you'll just kind of check them, in an example, and you'll keep moving. And some of my co-facilitators said, Eric, I think you might go back to her and just check in or something like that. And so based upon their feedback, I apologized to her. I said, you know what? I did something earlier that I didn't really use empathic listening. And I think I kind of even cut off what you were saying. I want to apologize for that. And she said, oh my God, like I didn't never notice it at all. You seem very supportive. Now, here's the thing. It didn't matter at all if she had been offended at all. My team saw something, they brought it to my attention, and I chose to apologize no matter what, because I agreed with the validity of what they were saying. Even though she didn't experience it, I need to model what it looks like for leaders to apologize to people publicly, because that's what we have to model for everybody else in the organization. Now, here's what I'm seeing. So I've got a DEI council now. And councils, oftentimes, they're the good ones. They're the good people in the organization, the people that really want to see change. But if diversity councils aren't careful, they will seek to become bad bosses. They want to judge the organization. They want to put pressure on the leadership. They want to check all the bigots that they see lurking around the organization. Well, that's not helpful. That's like being a bad boss. The first thing that you have to do is first study and own your own biases. If you're not willing to do that, I would say then you may lack the integrity necessary to provide leadership, effective leadership to the rest of the organization. So let's look at if there's anything else that people are saying. So that's what I want to offer to you. And so as a result of, so I've told the DEI Council that your first job is to learn, to own your own biases, to learn the skills that we're talking about around belonging, around unconscious bias, around empathic listening, around perspective taking. You've got to learn those skills. You've got to apply those skills yourself. The first order of business for you is not figuring out what all you're going to fix in the organization. It's trying to be the best learner you can be and make sure that you're not just going, it's like being a police officer. When you're a police officer, every party that you go with your friends is, oh, the cop is here now. Everybody, the cop is here. And so the last thing you want to be is a police officer because everybody is hiding and they don't treat you like you're a regular human being. If you're in diversity, if you're a champion of diversity, the last thing that you want to become is the police. The best thing that you can become is a role model. Model the behaviors. Be the change you want to see. And so that's what I want to encourage us to do and so what I'm seeing with this council is people that are willing to apologize. One of the council members said, she said, I had a friend in the organization that had a boss that she said was treating her wrong, was doing her wrong. She said, and that was my friend. She said, so since my friend said her boss was treating her wrong, well, an enemy of my friend is an enemy of mine. She said, so I started killing the boss everywhere. I would dog that boss out. That boss is nothing. They're not worth anything. She said, and then one day I met the boss. She said, and when I met the boss, she said she wasn't anything like that. She was really a wonderful person. She said, I learned that my friend had deceived me. And she said, I had to apologize to her boss. And I told her boss, I said, I've been killing you all over the organization. She said, every time I get a chance, I've been saying something bad about you. And that is flat out wrong. She says, and now that I've met you, I just want to let you know that I'm sorry. That's what I'm talking about. And then another person in the council apologized to that woman, said, I had been saying things about you for years because I didn't fully know you. But now that I do, I owe you an apology. And then all of a sudden the council starts looking at me like, Eric, don't start crying. Don't start crying, because you know where I am anymore? I really know what my job is. My job is simply, I'm seen as a DEIB, a subject matter expert. Woo-hoo. Actually, my job is to love people and to show people how to love each other. And when I see that happening, man, I am moved. And I'm not above crying. You see, my grandfather was a man of steel, an old school man, second grade education, farmer. Get up in the morning, 300 acres, never talked much, never cried until he was 80 years old and he was in a nursing home. And then all those tears that he had stored up for decades, he was pouring them out every year. Well, I'm not going to wait till I'm 80. I am moved by people doing the right thing. That's what I'm about. And so when I see people loving each other, and when I see people making themselves vulnerable, when I see people displaying their authentic selves in the workplace, that moves me. Because I believe that it's going to take that for us. We're in the midst of division being an existential threat. We're not going to bully or beat people up into respecting each other, treating each other fairly, being equitable to each other. Do I believe that protests and other things are needed? Yes. That's a diversity critical thinker. I've been a protester. I believe that it's very valuable. It's a very valuable part of this process. Are people going to sometimes be upset, even angry at the injustices that they face? Yes, I understand all of that. But here's what I'd say to you, that I am not ever going to allow the hate, the bigotry, the violence in you to get in me. Because see, that's when you've won. It's when I allow whatever's in you to take over me. When I recognize that love is more powerful than hate, then I never have to worry about you overcoming me with hate. You can't do that. And so when I had this person the other day that was jacking me up in the in the focus group, the biggest thing that came over my face was a smile. I mean, I literally was smiling because it was like a parent, that watches a child that's just throwing a tantrum. You can either get in the tantrum with them Or you could just say, oh, really? That's how we about to do this? Okay. And so I just watched them, and I admired that a person, I'm not no shrinking violet. So I'm not the first person that people are going to just come at, But the fact that they were going off like that, I just kind of smiled and said, well, this is a new experience. It's not often that I see this. And then I tried an angle and tried another angle and tried another angle. And other angles were working, and it's fine. It's fine. Because some people came to the rescue later and had already gone to the company and said, I think we might owe him an apology, which, I appreciate that. Let's see. So I really appreciate those of you that have joined me today. I got a couple other things that I want to share before we get out. This is so important. Larissa, you're gonna like this part. Perspective taking. So this is the relearning that I've gained over the last week. Perspective taking is a huge skill. The act of perceiving how a situation appears to another person and their cognitive and emotional reactions. And so it's part of what we need is to gain the perspective of others. And there's some research and this is what really moved me. The research says that the act of even thinking about another person's perspective changes your brain. It changes your brain, and it changes where you go in your brain to come up with solutions. In other words, not the act of engaging in perspective taking, just the thought of it, the thought of another person's perspective, even if it's not right. It activates the innovative and creative areas of your brain, thus giving you access to more possibilities. Just the act of engaging in perspective taking. Now, there's perspective getting, which is when you go to others and seek to get their perspective and really get it from the horse's mouth. Perspective taking is when you're trying to imagine or think about their perspective. So we can see that perspective oftentimes depends on where you are. One person sees it as the 6, the other person sees it as a 9. And so, so we have to look at where we're coming from. Let's continue. Now, there are 4 steps in perspective taking. The one is seek to understand the lived experience of another. So that's the first step, to try to do that where we can. And then to brainstorm what their reality might be. So if I think about conservatives, then I have to brainstorm what are some of the things that might be a part of their reality. Well, they might think that liberalism is taking over, that colleges and universities don't really value people who have conservative values. People who are of faith that are conservative may believe that the world is looking to even eliminate the validity of their faith and take away their freedom to express their faith. Some people might believe that their fiscal conservative nature, that some people may despise that because they're more interested in social programs and things like that, and they think that we need to keep investing in those. So I have to just brainstorm what all I think might be in the reality of a person who sees the world differently than I do. And then I want to utilize or sort of prioritize, hypothesize what I might sort of approach them with, what idea I might utilize out of all those things I brainstormed, what I might utilize in my conversation with them. Because perspective taking is I'm trying to consider that as I'm engaging in a conversation with them. And then once I utilize my best idea, my best hypothesis, then I observe and adapt. So I thought this, oops, it was wrong, adapt. Put that in my mental models so that in the future, I try to be aware of that and make some change. And I remember, 25 years ago, I was doing a workshop with the Department of Commerce. I was in there and I used the word ladies. And I saw a couple of women's body language change up. And then I said it again. And I saw them just do like this. It seemed like it was in slow motion. The arms went up in the air, they folded, and they just hung. And so I couldn't ignore that. So I said, excuse me, is there something wrong? Yes. Okay, what is it? You said ladies. Now, I just started my business a couple of years in the 90s. I said, and really, I didn't understand what they were saying. They said, "You said ladies." I said, "Ladies? What's wrong with that?" And then they said, "Well," I said, "Well, certainly, I want to apologize." I said, "Help me to understand, what was." And then they shared some things, and I said, "I got it." And they were saying, when you say ladies, it sounds like you're describing women as sort of up on a sort of a showpiece up on a mantle place or something like that. And immediately I got it. But here's the thing. Now, when you get a perspective, when you gain a perspective from someone there, you put it in your mental models around things that are likely that could offend others. Now, I didn't eliminate the word ladies altogether from my language because I know that when I'm in churches where there are, more people that are maybe of traditional values, there may be some women that see ladies as a term of endearment or something like that. But now what I had back in the early 90s was a new entry that said the term ladies could be offensive. And so strike that from your communication in business and other settings. And so because of what it does in terms of, additional marginalization of people. And so that was helpful. So that's what happens when you try something, then you adapt when you get some new information. Let's continue. Now, this is where I want to end because these are two tools. If you're on a computer, take a screenshot, or you can send me a request. Just want to make sure I get you in it. Actually, good at considering others' perspective. Excellent. Let's see. Okay, thank you. Let me go back on that. And so, so what you're doing is when you think, let me see, I know that there are these terms that I can use with people. I'm not sure if it's African American or Black. I heard that in university environments, in professional environments, African American might be the preferred term. So let me say, hey, when I'm, we're preparing for some work that we want to do with our African American employees, so I've used that. So I brainstormed all the things that could be sensitive to people of color. I use African American in a professional environment. The person says, well, I don't really, like the term African Americans. I really believe that people of color or BIPOC are better terms. And so then I make an adjustment. So I utilize what I think is right. When I get feedback that says that didn't necessarily work for this person in this situation, then I observe and I adapt and adjust. That's what I'm talking about there. This right here. So I was looking at Wharton School had two examples of things that we could do that would shift our brain and our ability to be effective at perspective taking. The first is sort of recalling situations that we've been in. And so you have to do it exactly like this. Both of these are sort of nano skills. They're skills that can be done in 5 minutes or less. So spend 30 seconds, and you can get a stopwatch and do this. Spend 30 seconds recalling a situation from the last 2 weeks when you attempted to take another person's perspective on a topic. So spend recalling the situation. Then spend 3 minutes describing the situation in detail from beginning to end using written bullet points. So you literally are writing this out. 3 minutes, from beginning to end, that situation from 2 weeks over 2 weeks over the last 2 weeks. Then the third thing, you spend 1 minute to imagine the situation from the other person's perspective. Specifically, imagine how they would describe the interaction with you. So take a minute to imagine that situation and sort of that. And then the final is reflect on for 30 seconds on what you did that was useful to understand the other person's perspective. So now you're saying, okay, out of all the things that I did, what was useful? What worked? And I capture those. So that's reflecting on situations from the past and then trying to gain some knowledge around what worked and what didn't. Then the second perspective taking is to think about imagining some things in the future that can occur. So spend 1 minute thinking of at least 3 situations during the next 2 weeks when it might be beneficial to understand someone else's perspective. And then take one of those and reflect for 3 minutes on one situation. Describe what it might look like from the beginning to end if you were to engage in perspective taking. Imagine as clearly as possible and write down these things: details of how you'd start, what you would keep in mind during the conversation, how you would respond to things the other person might do or say. So you want to write all those things down specifically as possible. And then the third thing is reflect for 1 minute on how perspective taking might improve the short and long-term outcomes of the interaction. So what the research says is that as you engage in reflecting over situations that you've had in the past or imagining situations that are going to occur in the future, that it shifts what happens in your brain and it gives you more practice. In other words, as you are doing this, even in your mind, your brain responds as though you're really doing it right now. And so I'll give you a sort of a bonus insight. It's the reason why you don't want to recall the negative situations over and over and over again. Sometimes if we're not careful, we spend too much time rehearsing the bigotry and the insults that we've, the slings and arrows that have been thrown at us. And the research says that every time I recall those, the same trauma that I went through when I went through it, I'm now re-traumatizing myself. So I'm going to say to many people, try to avoid telling stories over and over and over again about painful situations that have happened to you, because in many ways you're re-traumatizing yourself. But then on the positive angle, this is what you can use to help you prepare to be a better perspective-taking person, is think about it in the past and rehearse, name down the details of what you did, and then comb out of that sort of the things that really were helpful and worked. Imagine some things in the future, a situation, work through it in detail, and it's almost like your brain is doing it right now. The more you practice it, the more natural it becomes, the more effective you become as a person who can take perspectives of others, which is helpful. Thank you. So I appreciate you, man. And thank you for joining in with us today, you and Larissa, for being both active participants in this diversity conversations. I've gone a couple of minutes over, but it was worth it. I thank you all for joining me today. And thank you for joining us in another diversity conversation. And next week, we'll see you again. And Tommy Lewis will hopefully rejoin us then. Take care. Love somebody.